Well, hey, everyone. Welcome back to Empowered Educator. Happy Friday. I had the great honor of having Dr. David Arencibia on the show. David is a distinguished educator with over 2 decades of experience. He's renowned for his expertise in fostering successful school cultures. He is a sought-after keynote speaker and the author of Foundations of an Elite Culture, which is his book. He gifted me a copy of it, and it is amazing so far. So you need to get your hands on a copy of that. And it became a #1 new release on Amazon. David's accolades include being named a 2023 National Principal of the Year finalist, the 2022 Texas Secondary Principal of the Year, and a 2022 Texan of the Year finalist. David's leadership has led his school to national recognition, including being named one of the best schools in Texas and the U.S. by the U.S. News and World Report. His school achieved notable milestones such as national recognition as a model campus and Texas School to Watch status. David's impactful work has been highlighted in prominent education publications and media, and he now focuses on speaking, training, and coaching to help others build elite cultures in schools and organizations. It was such an honor to have him on the show, and you're going to get a lot of great information coming from him. And in typical Mel fashion, we talked way past when we should have stopped. And so I'm going to have to break this into episodes or it's going to be really, really long. So this is the first half of my conversation with Dr. David Arencibia. Hi, friend. Are you ready to move into a leadership position? Do you have interests and ambitions that you want to pursue, but feel like you don't know how to take that next step? Maybe you want to start your own coaching or consulting agency. I'm Mel, and I help educators define their career path through correct mindset, knowing your options, and getting prepared for your career transition. I will show you how to level up your leadership skills, share your expertise in a new way, create impact on a larger scale, and put your leadership in motion. As an educator for over 20 years, I started to feel underused and like I had more to give. I knew when the time had come for me to leave the classroom and affect change on a larger level. Now, I'm ready to help you determine where your talents and skills mesh with your passions and interests. Put your leadership in motion and move into that next phase of your educational career journey. Let me help you define your career path by having the right mindset, knowing your options, and getting prepared for that next leadership position. So power up and put your leadership in motion. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Mel Vandevort, and today I have a guest with me all the way from Texas. I have Dr. David Arencibia. And he's going to talk to us about culture today. I'm super excited to have him on the show. Welcome to the show.
Oh, it's great to be here, Dr. Mel. Thank you so much for having me. I'm truly excited about this. It's going to be a great time.
Me too. I've been looking at some of your social media and you do a lot of speaking, and I've seen some different things that you're doing with Department of Education and that kind of stuff. So tell us a little bit about yourself and about your educational career.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, so I have my hands in a lot of different things. So I've been in education now for over 2 decades, got all positions, right? From everything from a teacher to a coach, coaching football, baseball, track and field. It's a really big deal down here in Texas, as you can imagine. Definitely the world revolves around sports in a lot of ways down here. So I've done the coaching stint, department chair, administrator for several years, all at the secondary level. So everything from 6th grade on up to seniors in high school in between. But as far as my speaking and whatnot, that definitely goes for everyone at all levels. And so that's what I'm currently doing right now, full time. I'm speaking, going around and consulting, coaching. teamed up with Jimmy Cassis and Associates. He was my publisher for my book, Foundations of an Elite Culture. So I'm matched up with him. I'm doing some contract work with Character Strong. Definitely a huge believer in their work.
Wow.
So I'm
Yes.
doing that as well. And then finally, beyond myself, John Gordon. So I'm a John Gordon, a certified speaker, and I've been a little bit on his team with the Energy Bus for Schools, his new release that he had just this past a few months ago. So got my hands in a
Wow.
lot of different things. Yes.
I just recently had the Energy Bus for School on my podcast. So,
Okay. Yeah,
um,
Dr. Van Allen.
yes, yes,
Yes.
yep.
Great,
Yes.
great individual.
Just a few months ago, right at the beginning of summer, I think is when he was on, and we had a great conversation as well. So yeah, we have some connections there.
We do. We do. Yeah, no, with that, I was absolutely blessed with that. We had some success where I was a principal the last 8 years, and some really, really high levels of success. And he came in, kind of saw what was going on, and we partnered up together. And he even featured myself in the school in the book. And then he asked me to endorse
Wow.
it. Yeah, so if you look on the back of that book, I'm one of his endorsements. Him and John Gordon, and and that was just through the connection piece of being named principal year. You don't want to hear about that stuff. That's just some accolades there, but we partnered up, and he's doing some really good work. So I got to definitely listen to that podcast between the two of you all.
Yes, yes, it was a really good conversation. He is very well spoken, and yes, I really enjoyed it. Definitely. Yeah, you've got a lot going on. That's great. If you don't know what character strong is, you're just probably not an educator for real. I mean, like, because that's like a very big name out there in the education world. So wonderful. Tell us a little bit about your book.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. Yeah, Foundations of an Elite Culture. It's been out for a few months. I was very, very honored that it was a number one new release in its category on Amazon for over a week. That was really,
Wow.
really neat.
Yes.
But yeah, no. So it's basically just my experiences professionally and also just personally, and how it all came together. And basically, the whole concept of building an elite culture is just taking these two fundamental pillars that I've discovered over the years that have garnered a lot of success in the programs and schools, classrooms that I've had the fortunate privilege to be a part of. And that's basically taking these two pillars of having some really, really high standards. We're all doing what we do for a reason, and we all have a mission to really help and impact our kids, for instance, in the classroom or in schools, and really have those high standards. And then on the second pillar, if you will, that I talk about in elite culture is the relational part, building positive relationships. And so glad you mentioned Dr. Van Allen right there in the Energy Bus, because it's definitely a lot of components of that positivity and how to build these ecosystems that are just wonderful for everyone to be a part of and involved in, because we discovered that elevates just wonderful foundations of success. So it's basically the combination of these two pillars, if you will, high standards and positive environments, and then mending them together and really elevating the teams, the schools, the classes, the school districts, and elevating them to another level when you're able to merge the two really well. But I can go into that all day long. But that's really the essence of the book. And of course, just tons of strategies in there for all kinds of educators and beyond. A lot of leadership components that are embedded in the book as well.
That's awesome. So you can use it outside of education and it's still applicable.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, especially the first part of the book. I'm doing some keynotes, and then I'm actually doing some professional developments as well for businesses. Because they're using the book because of the two concepts that
Mhm.
I just talked about in those, because it's applicable everywhere. And leadership is leadership, even though we may be in different settings. Let's say education versus a business entity, if you will. Leadership components, they're universal. There's some
Mhm.
universal language when we're talking about working with individuals. There's a lot of components that go together very well, whether you're in education or in business. So all that to say, doing a lot of work with some companies, some organizations that, because of the book, yes, is applicable in the first place.
And, I have recently started my own educational consultancy and I am working twofold. So I do go into schools and I work with teachers and administration on instruction, the instructional end of things. but then I'm building a business end on the backside, and it is to teach educators how to start their own educational consultancy. And there is a lot of crossover in what I'm learning from my coaches and my mentors that absolutely crossover from education to the business world on the leadership end of stuff. So yeah, definitely a lot of lingo, a lot of the same mindset, the things that I am working on, even just figuring out like what does it look like for you? It's the same whether you are in education or whether you're in the business world. So yeah, definitely. So great. That's great that anybody can pick up your book, and if they want to move into leadership or they're in leadership, there's some great tips, strategies for them, no matter what field they're in.
Absolutely. A lot of actionable takeaways in there. I was very adamant about that. As all educators, we definitely love the how to's, the strategies, how can I start moving in that direction that I'm desiring to be? So I know the strategies are so important. So the book's
Yes.
definitely riddled with a bunch of them. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. And that's what my audience loves, because we are educators. They expect some actionable steps. And how can I put this into practice right now? And what can I take away right now and put it into practice? And so, yeah, that's great. Definitely.
Yes.
So, we're going to talk a little bit about culture today and leadership, how that intermingles. So, I'm just going to let you take the floor and you can start. And then I'm going to do some follow up and ask you some questions along the way and maybe throw my opinion out here and there. So if you want to just take the floor and get started on how culture and leadership go together, take it
Yeah.
away.
And I love how you talk a lot about when it comes to mindset. Mindset is such an important piece when we're talking about leadership, because I truly believe personally that it all begins with ourselves. So it begins with our mindset. It begins to understanding what our strengths and our personal talents are, and how we are able to basically give ourselves in whichever capacity to the world, if you will. Because I truly believe that from a leadership standpoint, that we all harness our own unique strengths and talents, as I mentioned. So, and sharing those to the world is extremely important. I believe that's a big time leadership characteristic. So I'm a big John Maxwell fan,
Oh,
and
me
and
too.
he
Me too.
And he constantly talks about, as you know, leadership is influence. He says nothing more, nothing less. And basically, the concept, as I understand that, is hey, we all have the opportunity to influence the individuals around us. And as educators, we have a wonderful responsibility to educate our current generation, right? That will eventually impact our future generations. Not only that, but especially I know that a lot of your audience is talking about teachers moving to the next role in leadership. So it goes beyond the students. Now we're talking about colleagues and how we're impacting and influencing others in those leadership roles. So I could talk about leadership all day long, but just know that that's really the foundation. I truly believe it begins with a mindset ourselves individually, and truly understanding ourselves and how we can give back to the world with our personal strengths and talents. And I truly believe that leadership just begins there. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Dr. Mel, on some of that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Even like we were talking before, and when I moved into my first administrative role, it was a mindset shift. And even just little things, I told you that I mentioned going to my classroom when I didn't have one any longer, because you get you're really kind of siloed when you're a teacher. You have this one track mind. It's all about students. And then when you move to that other role, then it's not just about students anymore. And you are really all encompassing for your teachers and your students. And you may not be directly influencing your students, you're influencing your teachers who influence your students. I mean, you
Right.
still are influencing your students, of course, because you still have contact with them, but your job is to make sure that your teachers are creating the culture in their classroom, that they're influencing the students in a positive way. And you have to really wrap your mind around, what does that look like for me as an administrator? How can I convey that to my teachers in a way that they can take it back and it be something that they're successful at in the classroom?
Right. I love that. And I mean, you're exactly right, because now our scope of reference and our frame of thought and our mind and the way we approach things definitely expands. Anytime you move up the leadership ranks, if you will, positional, because I truly believe, positional is one thing. It's beyond positional. But as we do climb the ladder, if you will, positionally, that influence definitely expands. However, at the end of the day, I love how you said that, because ultimately we still impact students. Right, our influence and how we interact with our staff, how we support our teachers, that directly impacts our students.
Yes.
And then also on top of that, I'm very big on being visible. When I was on the campus for the past 23 years, I wanted to be out and about and be visible, because I truly believe that being in the quote unquote trenches, if you will, being where I can communicate and talk to teachers, support staff, and students directly, I still get that opportunity to have that direct impact. And that's what I love about being on a campus. And that's one thing I'll miss about being on campus, having that direct impact, because we still are able to do that and at so many different levels.
Yes. And that was one thing that we were taught in Missouri. We have something called the Missouri Leadership Development System. And it was fairly new when I became a principal for the first time. And so I was afforded the opportunity by my school district to go through that program. It was a 2-year program. And the one thing that we were it was instilled in us every time, every classroom, every day. Now, depending on your size of your building or your campus, that might not be something you can do every single day. But the point was, be visible, be in the classrooms, see what's going on, understand the culture in the classrooms, so you know where to go with your teachers, so you can have conversations with your teachers around what is happening in that classroom. And then your students also feel connected to you because they see you. And I know when I was a teacher, I would see my principal 4 or 5 times a year come in my classroom. That was it. I didn't get a lot of good feedback. I would get the little paper at the end of my evaluation saying, okay, you did this, this, and this well. You need to work on this. Okay, well, what does that look like? And you were in my classroom one time in the last how long? And you are telling me I didn't do this effectively, but you weren't here to see anything else. So tell me, how can I grow? What do I need to do to correct the things you're telling me need to be corrected? And as a principal, that was one of the things that made me want to be a principal. Okay, there's got to be a better way of doing professional development, first of all. And I want to be a better principal than what I've had in the past. Now, I'm not saying my principals were bad. I'm saying I wanted more than what I was getting from my principal, because I wanted to be more effective as a teacher. And so that was something I wanted to do as a principal, be more effective. And so learning that through the MLDS, it was very eye-opening for me.
Yeah, I love that. How powerful, because sometimes we know how we want to lead based on watching others and maybe their ineffectiveness, if you will, or things that they do maybe really, really well. Like, I really like how he or she really did that. I'm gonna put that in my back pocket right there. Or I really remember how I felt that I'm only getting that slip right from only being seen twice, 3 times a year. So I know that I'm not going to be that. So those experiences, good and bad, they are definitely important for sure. And I really love how you're talking about the shift, even going from the classroom now as a leader. And now we're talking about there's got to be some intentionality depending on the size of my school, depending on how many teachers I have, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about mindset and mind shift, biggest one that I had to discover personally, at least for myself, going in from a teacher to an administrator and being a new administrator, was how do I manage my time? Because I'm no longer on a bell to bell. My calendar is completely different now. And so one of the things I quickly had to learn, and I'm very grateful that I did, was how to manage my calendar to ensure that I am intentionally getting into as many classrooms as possible. And there's a lot of intentionality with that. But that's probably one of the biggest things anyone making that change into administrative role and or even a coaching role from a support model role from the district level, let's say, is how to really effectively utilize our calendars because it's a completely different new concept for us. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And is that part of your book? Is that something that's in your book, the calendar part of it?
So it is for teachers. So we're talking about strategies. There's the last couple of chapters. There's so many turnkey strategies that's really impactful for teachers. However, there are different. They're scattered throughout the book, if you will, for executive, administrative types, CEO types, leaders. There are some sprinkled strategies, but definitely a lot for teachers on the back end. But yeah, that is definitely something that I consult a lot on because, again, it's one of the biggest changes that we have to change here in order to be an effective administrator.
And I was always really good about that as a teacher as well. My schedule was very organized for the most part. Now, you're going to have to move things. That's just life. You have to move things, but you have to build your calendar in a way that you have space to move things. So you don't fill up every single spot with something because you need that flexibility in your calendar. And that is the same whether you are a teacher, whether you are an administrator, or whether you are an educational consultant with a business. And that is something that I'm learning. That is also some of that connected vocabulary or lingo, if you will, between the business world and the education world, because you have to live by a calendar sometimes when you're trying to grow things or when you have that much responsibility. So yes, definitely.
Absolutely. I love that. And being organized, well, ultimately what we're talking about, organization with our time, which is one of the most valuable assets we have, right? It is time. That's universal in the sense of, like you mentioned, as a teacher, and you also mentioned my book in the back of the book, my final chapters talk about backwards designing, how to ensure that we are not filling up every single minute because you know what? The fire alarm is going to get pulled every single month at some point, and that's guaranteed, by state code. Having the fire drills. And so we got to be really, really mindful to create those spaces of flexibility. We're talking about shifts, mind shifts. Here's another thing. Not everything's a fire. Right. Not everything's a fire. And we need to truly prioritize our time to what is the most important thing at that moment. And if I'm going to put on my calendar that I'm going to go and visit teachers and I'm going to have a 2-hour block that I'm going and doing nothing but classroom visits and opportunities to see kids in action, see teachers in action, I've got to stick to that. Just because a teacher sends a kid out of class for whatever reason, something that's not major. I'm obviously talking not, major fights or anything like that, unfortunately may or may not happen. I'm talking about, lower level stuff. The student can wait. My calendar, that teacher and that classroom and that observation and that time is very much important. So again, that mind shift, right, and with our time and then valuing those things that we do believe are the most important at that time, which everything's important, but prioritizing what is most and what's not. And that's the same with business, right?
All right. We're going to stop here for today, but I want you to join me back here, same time, same place next week for the second half of my conversation with Dr. David Arencibia. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.